Today's show is presented by our friends over at Sendinblue. This is episode 350 of Jumblethink.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Jumblethink, where we interview dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers all about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's show is Lalvani. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime fan, if you've never subscribed to Jumblethink, head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts, search for Jumblethink, and click subscribe. To make it even easier, if you head on over to jumblethink.com, you'll find links to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and more, making it easy to just click that link and click subscribe. Now let's join today's conversation. Hey there, friends. Welcome to Jumblethink. My name's Michael Woodward. I am your host, and we have a great conversation with a friend of mine on today's episode. But before we dive into that conversation, I want to thank our friends over at Sendinblue for sponsoring today's show. Sendinblue can help you manage your email lists and send out those pesky emails to make it easier to reach your subscribers, whether they're fans, they're customers, or whatever you're trying to communicate. Their tools make it painless and powerful to do that. Best of all, they want to give you 1 month free of their premium plan as a listener of Jumblethink, but it's only good for the first 100 Jumblethink subscribers who sign up. All you have to do is head on over to sendinblue.com/Jumblethink at sendinblue.com/Jumblethink and use the code Jumblethink to get 1 month free of their premium plan. I am super excited about today's conversation. It's with a guy I actually knew before the conversation. Rocky and I met virtually because of podcasting on Facebook and LinkedIn. And since then, though, we've been a part of a couple of the same events. We've joined the same networking group here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And it's really cool to sit down with someone that I've become a friend with. But beyond that, I'm super excited because he's talking about important stuff. He helps small business owners maximize their business profits. Beyond that, he allows them to have the time and freedom to really focus on the things that they love. I don't know about you, but as a small business owner myself, I know that many times in my business, I am focusing on the things I don't love. He is a wealth of information, and his story is truly inspiring. Now let's go ahead and join the conversation that Rocky and I had. Our guest today is Rocky Lalvani. Did I say that right, Rocky?
Lalvani.
Are you Italian?
I'm not. I'm actually from India.
Oh, okay. Is that an Indian last name?
It is an Indian last name, but everyone thinks I'm Italian.
Wow. I had no idea. Well, there you go. Learn something new. I'm excited to have you on. We've gotten the opportunity to meet a few times in person at an entrepreneurial meetup in beautiful Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And now we're not meeting up so much anymore because, well, coronavirus is going on. How are you holding up with everything?
Good. You know, it was funny. It happened, and I was going out to all these meetings everywhere, and all of a sudden, overnight, everything canceled.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, now what? And then all of a sudden, overnight, everyone went to Zoom. Everyone started putting all their material out for free. I mean, so many entrepreneurs and online business owners were like, you know what? Here's my course. Take it for free. So all of a sudden, my calendar went full, empty, full, overfull.
It's amazing. We were talking about this offline before, and it's amazing how, in theory, you would think that things have slowed down. But for me, and it sounds like for you too, it's actually been busier.
I'm working longer than I've ever worked, and I'm not supposed to be working this hard.
Is it because you're having to hustle to figure this out, or is it just because it's easy to not have to turn off when you're stuck at home all day?
I think what happens is I come down here and I start working in the morning, and I have things that I love doing, and I just keep doing them. And you know, so I just keep doing them, and I enjoy it. And then at some point, somebody will come down and go, hey, do you want to have dinner now? And so then we'll go up, and at that point I'll usually shut off, and I won't come back down. I just have a ton of things that I want to do. and I'm having fun doing them, and they take twice as long as they're supposed to for some reason.
Well, I think that's the thing is like we really don't have a concept of time or day anymore.
No, we don't. I don't know what day it is. And even before in my life, for me, Mondays and Saturdays were always the same in the sense of my outlook.
Yeah.
Because I would always be doing things I enjoyed, and I never hated my job. I never loved it, but I never hated it. And so everything just kind of blended together. My weekends were busy with the kids. So it's like, hey, today's the day I'm doing this. Today's the day I'm doing that.
Now, we're going to pivot here a little bit and talk about your journey into what you're doing today. You have Profits Come First. We're going to talk a lot about that. You have the Richer Soul podcast, which I just got to be on your show a couple minutes ago. And what a fun time. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I enjoyed the conversation.
You know, there's two paths of entrepreneurship that I see for a lot of people. There's the path that is knew that they were born for this. And, you know, at 3 months old, they're selling coffee or lemonade on a lemonade stand, and they've been doing entrepreneurship all of their life. And then there's the second path, which is kind of either they grew discontent or they kind of stumbled into it and weren't planning to be that entrepreneur. How was your journey into entrepreneurship?
So mine is kind of mixed.
Okay.
As a kid, I had a paper route, and I learned how to make money. I always wanted money. So I learned how to make money early as a kid. And I grew up outside of New York City. So I don't know how this even came to be, but I would go into New York City, into the wholesale districts and buy stuff. And I would come back and I would sell it to my classmates. So I'd mark it up 100%. So I was always making money. But at the same time, I also had a job. Like I washed dishes, and that whole journey, I went from washing dishes to helping them own franchise restaurants in probably inside of 4 years.
Yeah.
But the person who ran that restaurant said, go to college. Don't do this. I grew up with that classic story of, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, maybe you go to grad school and you become an engineer or a doctor or those types of things. But I got very sick of school. Like I hated school towards the end. Even though I was smart and I could do well, I just didn't like the whole atmosphere. I got out of college and I had a great business idea that, looking back now, would have made me a billionaire.
Yeah.
But I never implemented it because I didn't understand how powerful it would become.
Wow.
Number one.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I got a decent job, and within a year I was making a lot of money. So I always say the enemy of great is good. When things are good and comfortable, you don't push yourself. And so that was the mistake I made, was not pushing myself to more, because things were pretty good. Yeah. And I was living what I thought was the American dream until one day you wake up and go, this might be a nightmare.
I saw an interesting comment on Facebook today. It was another podcaster, and they were asking, would you prefer to have freedom or safety? And I think that's an interesting question, and what you're kind of hitting at here, because safety is never guaranteed. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that back in the 2008 recession, and now again, to say, oh, all the things that I was told were guaranteed, they're not so guaranteed. For you, you wake up that one morning and you kind of go, the safe way is now my own trap. I'm trapped here. How did you make that pivot out and say, what could I do and how do I get there? How did you make that shift?
So this goes back quite a while. It's probably now, I'm thinking, maybe 9 years ago. So we talked on our show about money and money mindsets.
Yeah.
I grew up always talking about money. That's what we did in our family.
And I want to ask you about that real quick. So many people, and we were talking about this a few minutes ago, offline or on your show, I can't remember which, but we were talking about how untypical it is for most families to grow up in a culture where they do talk about money. Why was that so prevalent for you where that's not kind of the norm?
So we were immigrants, right? Coming from India. The place that we come from, India, talking about money is just natural. Like, you would always hear stories. Like you'd even know people's salaries.
Wow.
Like I remember my dad coming home and saying, oh yeah, so-and-so has this job and they make this much money. And we would know that. Or so-and-so bought a house and they paid this much for the house, or they bought this car and this is how much this car cost. So you would hear these conversations, and culturally we negotiate because that's just what actually most of the rest of the world does. So,
true. So true.
You hear these. We just grew up having conversations about money. It was just natural. And I think also because my parents had to start over. And so they started at the bottom of the economic ladder and had to move up it financially again, that these were just the conversations and things that my dad taught me growing up. And so it was just natural. For me, though, as an adult, I was confused. I'm like, we live in America. This is an abundant country. Why aren't there more millionaires?
Yeah.
What's missing? And so that was where I finally found somebody. I was reading an article, and it was Ramit Chetty. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No,
he teaches. His website is I Will Teach You to Be Rich, but it's not really that scammy as it sounds. So I'm reading it. It was one of the financial magazines, because I always read the Wall Street Journal and financial magazines since I was in high school.
Right.
And he started to talk about money mindsets and how people have all of these hang-ups around money, and people think it's evil to be rich. And if you think it's evil to be rich, you'll never save money. And there's all of these wrong mindsets around money. And so I'm like, this guy's finally helping me understand how other people think about money. And so I started following him. I got into a mastermind group, and that really started to open up my eyes to personal growth and to that whole journey. Underlying that, though, the underlying theme was I was always reading the Wall Street Journal. Every recession had the same story. Some guy in his early 50s, right, hits a recession. He loses his job. He's got too much pride. He can't find another job. There's age discrimination. He's at the top of his game. He's got kids in high school or college, and everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will never be that guy.
Yeah.
Right. So I built financial success from that. So that theme was going on. Underlying is build my financial success. I had a pretty good job. They didn't bother me. I kind of followed the principles of 4-hour work week. So things were pretty awesome for the most time. So I was like, well, what am I going to do next? Because I know this industry's dying. I know it's not going to last forever.
What industry was it?
I was in selling of pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
So the pharmaceutical industry is doing phenomenal.
Yeah.
The selling of pharmaceuticals, that job class took a massive hit. Like it's come back again, but for very different reasons. But it's a dying industry, basically. People don't want people selling drugs to doctors. So,
right. It just, there's ethics questions of like, how does this impact? Is there manipulation? Is there kickbacks?
Correct.
Yeah.
So all of that's kind of going on. So for 15 years, I'm like, how long can this last? And how long will they pay me this well to do so little?
Yeah. It paid a lot.
Paid a lot. It was a wonderful life. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But towards the end, so I was like, well, what do I want to build for my next life? Like, what am I going to do going into retirement that I enjoy and love and that the world needs? And I always had a struggle with the whole money thing. The reason I didn't go into financial sales is I hate all the products they sell. I'm like, these products are horrible.
Yeah.
They make the company money, but they screw the people over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do that. And so along that journey and along my personal growth, I found financial coaching. And so I was like, oh, people help people with money. And Dave Ramsey is one of those, he kind of deals with the people in debt. I went down, I spent a week with Dave Ramsey and his group, came out, quickly realized people focusing on that space. There's no money. You're dealing with all kinds of mindset issues, and there's a reason people are broke. And then I kind of went upscale and I said, there's people who make 6 figures and they still struggle with this.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, that's the people I'm going to help. I'll help people find purpose. I'll help them be more intentional with their life. We'll work on the money side. We'll work on the health side. Like we'll look at people holistically, because everyone out there is looking at people as silos. We'll do this one thing. Yeah, but this one thing is going to mess up the whole rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so the last pivot was from there, which was the personal financial coaching, to I found out business owners were just as bad as people with their money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I can help business owners, and business owners are willing to pay for that help.
Yeah.
And we can make dramatic impact. So that was the final pivot to profit comes first.
You know, there are certain kinds of categories in the industry. There's like the accountant, there's the bookkeeper, there's EAs. You are an EA, right?
I am an EA.
So talk to us a little bit about what that is, and enrolled agent. Which when I lived in California, that's who did all of our financials, was an EA. Loved it. It was way better than our bookkeeper was. Anyway, which we love our bookkeeper from a personal standpoint, but just didn't bring much to the table. Talk to us a little bit about the difference of these three different segments of business finance, and why an EA is really a rock star in the space that needs to be more known about.
So my wife is a CPA. She does tax.
Yeah.
So my original retirement plan was that she would leave her corporate job and start her firm, and I would go work with her. Well, she's like, go get your CPA. I'm like, I don't want to do all that work. And she's like, well, go get your EA, because then you can sign tax returns. You can do this stuff. And so I'm another weird thing. I would read the tax code. Like I would read those big, thick books about taxes because I hate paying taxes. So let me figure out how to not pay taxes.
Okay.
So it was it created for us kind of a joint family business. And we've actually had a tax practice that we've kept purposely small for probably going on 20 plus years now.
Wow.
And so that's always been running in the background. What an enrolled agent basically is they're kind of equivalent to a CPA, but they only focus on taxes. So they don't do anything else that a CPA would do.
Okay.
All they do is taxes, and the IRS has created a designation that we can represent people in front of the IRS with the same authority as a CPA could. So it's kind of a niche within it of that. And the focus is entirely on the taxable side. Bookkeepers, their job is to put stuff into programs and put things where they belong and to put the proper labels on them. Your EA is strictly focused on doing your taxes. Your CPA can do all of those things and so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're really helping people with their tax strategy then.
Correct. And I've kind of stepped away a little bit of that. What I found after doing the EA is I hate doing the actual work. I love doing the consulting, but I hate doing the actual tax return.
We're talking about finance here. And for you, was it surprising when you found out that it wasn't the norm that people talked about money? Was that like crazy to you, or how did you process that?
Yeah, it was crazy to me. I'm like, how do you go? So for me, I went to essentially 13 years of primary school. 4 years, I got an economics degree, and then I have my MBA. Throughout that entire time, nobody taught anybody about how to build profit, how to build money, how to build wealth, and do any of that. I'm like, how do we go through all of this schooling in life with the sole purpose of going through all that schooling to get a job, to make money, to live a life, but yet we don't talk about how do you actually handle the money?
Right. So crazy. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the second segment. As we move towards the end of this first segment, I want you to kind of walk through Profits Come First, what that is, and then Richer Soul Podcast, and talk to us a little bit about those two things.
So Profit Comes First is basically so as I was building this business, I was like, do I recreate everything again, or do I hook up with somebody who's got a perfect system? So Mike Michalowicz has written a ton of books in the entrepreneurial space.
I see it right behind you, one of them.
It's right. Yeah. Profit First is one of the books.
Yeah.
So I've hooked up with Mike. I'm certified to teach his system. Profit Comes First is my branding on how I sell myself to teach that system. Richer Soul is basically my journey of hey, you got rich. Now what? So once you figure out the money piece, what is the rest of life? So how do you create harmony? And I use the word harmony because I used to use the word balance, but people think balance means everything's equal, and it's not.
No.
So I use the word harmony with your health, your wealth, your time, your relationships, and your spirituality. And how do you build that unique harmony for you in your life intentionally? And so I bring out the foundation, and then I go find experts in all those different areas to come on and say, how did they build that part? And then how does it all go together?
So we wrap up this first segment. We always ask, how are you finding purpose in what you do?
So there's another book on my shelf behind me. It's called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How to get out of the drift and how to create a life of purpose. And I take all my clients through the book too. I sat down, and over a period of about 3 months, I wrote down my life plan. What do I want? So what does my relationship with my kids look like? Mm-hmm. What does my relationship with my wife look like? What does my relationship with work and earning income look like? What does my relationship with God look like? What does my relationship with people look like? So in every single segment of my life, I defined for myself, what is it that I want out of life? And I wrote it down, and now I have a purpose plan.
Nice. I love that. What is one challenge you're currently working to overcome?
So I'm building a business, which is always a challenge, right?
Always fun.
Always fun. So it's learning how to connect, right? I was doing in-person networking. Now I'm learning how to do virtual networking. I'm learning how to do LinkedIn marketing. I'm learning how to do all these new things that I wasn't doing before. At the end of the day, I think all businesses are about sales. And so you've got to learn how to sell, learn how to connect with your audience, learn how to tell a story of how to do that and how to. So I'm working on all of those different pieces. It's not easy, but it's fun.
Yeah. What's the next big idea, dream, or goal you have?
I know the steps for how this is all going to go. So right now I do one-on-one personal coaching. That's not scalable.
No.
Right? It's not. So I know that. So step 2 is building a course.
Okay.
Step 3 is probably building a group to go with the course, because what I have found and what I've learned in the world of creating courses is 95+% of people don't finish the course.
Right.
They need somebody to help them through. So building a support group or some kind of group to go along with the course so people can get through the program. And then beyond that is probably creating some sort of mastermind so that the business owners who implement the system, who are working together, have a community where they can come together and talk about what is probably a very difficult subject for entrepreneurs. How are you handling your money? How are you handling issues within your business? How are you doing all of these money types of things in an open and sharing and caring way? So that's probably the last step of it, and that's the plan for now.
Nice. Love it. Well, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation, talk a little bit more about the world of education. We're going to talk about the profit-first approach and much more. We'll be right back. Hey there, friends. It's Mike. Sending out email newsletters should not be hard to do. And yet, a lot of the platforms out there are making it more and more difficult to simply message your audience, to share your products, to reach out to your customers. That's why I was excited to find Sendinblue. Sendinblue is the all-in-one marketing tool. Not only does it do beautiful email newsletters, it does much, much more. It's powerful. It's easy. I've been using it for the last couple of weeks, and I have to say the process has actually been fun again. Best of all, because you listen to Jumblethink, they want to give you 1 month free of their premium plan, but only to the first 100 Jumblethink listeners who sign up. So it's time to really dial in those campaigns to make the process of sending out email newsletters easy and fun again by using Sendinblue. Check them out at sendinblue.com/jumblethink and use the code jumblethink to get your first month free. I'm loving it, So why don't you check it out? I think you're going to love it too. Sendinblue.com/jumblethink and use that code jumblethink to get your first month free. Now let's return to today's conversation. We are back with Rocky. Before we get going, there's an important question that I know is burning in the hearts and minds of everyone listening. How can they find and connect with you?
I think the best place is to go to profitcomesfirst.com, and on the website itself, there's 4 links. You can email me. You can grab time on my calendar. If you want to grab Mike's book, there's 2 free chapters of his book that you can grab. And then from there, you can follow links over to Richer Soul and all the other work I do. Or if you're listening to podcasts, you can just look for Richer Soul on your podcast or The Profit Answer Man. Both of those are available.
And all of that will be in the episode notes. So wherever you are, you don't have to look far. Just look down below. It's there, I promise. I really found it fascinating when I went through the website, this whole profit first approach. I like holistic, not solutions, but approaches, I guess is just reuse the word, is the better way to say it. I think we do a really good job of segmenting our lives here, but the profit first approach is about holistic living. So talk to us a little bit about what the approach is and why this approach is better than, well, for most people, not even having an approach.
So profit first is built on certain principles, and those principles always work. So It doesn't matter whether you're a business owner or not. It's an automated system to put your money where you want it to go up front. So I built wealth by when I got out of college and I started working, I set up an automated system to put money in my 401k, an automated system to put money in my credit union, an automated system to buy stock in the company I was working for, an automated system to put money in a brokerage account that once it came out of my check. And once I turned those on, they just flowed and I went about living life. And so while I'm doing what I do and live life, money is being built automatically and behind the scenes. It turns out business owners are the same, right? We're all the same. We look at our bank account, we see a lot in there, so we spend it, right? It doesn't matter how much you make. The more you make, the more you spend. It's lifestyle inflation. It's business inflation in a sense. Hey, I've got money. I can spend it. It's worth investing in my business to growing it. Mike Michalowicz came up with the system to automate it because he sold his $1 million company and then quickly lost his $1 million.
Wow.
By just spending it because he was living too large, thinking that it was all there for him. And basically what the system does is it works with our habits. So have you heard of Parkinson's law?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay. So Parkinson's law is basically that the amount of resource we have, we use up. So just like lifestyle inflation, right?
Okay, yeah.
So if you think about it from a school kid's point of view, right? If I have a paper due, and I have to turn it in and the teacher gives me 3 weeks, you take 3 weeks to write the paper. Right. Actually, most kids don't take 3 weeks. They wait till the night before, and in 4 hours, they get it done. At the same point, though, if a teacher tells you today you need a term paper due tomorrow, you get it done. Mm-hmm. We do the same thing in our business with money, right? If we have $10,000 to spend on a business project to build a website, we'll spend $10,000. If you come to me and say, well, I need a website built and it's $1,000, you'll find a way to get a website built for $1,000.
Yeah.
So that's the underlying principle. Whatever we see, we use up. It's just human nature. The second principle of profit first is, we were talking about accounting. So all these accountants are taught standard, generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. And the standard formula is sales minus expenses equals profit.
Okay.
Well, where is profit? It's at the end.
Yeah.
It's a leftover. Yeah. Right? You find out when you go to your accountant at the end of the year, your business made a profit. And you're like, well, where is that money? And they just laugh at you and go, you spent it. So Mike said, we have the wrong formula. This is an accounting formula. It's not an entrepreneur success formula. Mm-hmm. So he changed the formula to sales minus profit equals expenses. Okay. And what basically happens is as soon as the money comes into our account, we take our profit immediately, right? And at the same point, you have to pay taxes. So let's take our taxes out immediately.
Yeah.
I deserve to be paid as a business owner. Let me take my payout up front. And now you're left with what's left. And what's left is a much smaller plate.
Yeah.
It's a smaller account.
Right.
Now, go ahead and spend your account, do what you want, but learn to live in that more realistic thing instead of living in this bigger pot that you thought you had until tax time, and then you're freaking out because you can't afford to pay the tax bill.
Yeah. I can think of hundreds of conversations that I've had over the years where an entrepreneur says, oh, we grossed whatever, $2 million last year. We grossed $5 million. We grossed $150,000. And then you ask the question of like, well, then how much money did you actually make? And they don't know. They're just like, well, we made this money. I said, well, you have expenses. You have all these things that you're paying, but what did you net? And I think so often people tout these successes. I think of the digital marketing world where people are like, oh, we made $5 million off of this online course, blah, 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 blah. And then you find out that they spent 5.5 million advertising it, And so, yeah, they brought in a lot of money, but they also spent a lot of money. Talk to us a little bit about a reality check that maybe something simple an entrepreneur can do to really start this shift that you're talking about.
Well, and I think it comes down, and I use that same example of, the 7-figure course launch, and they spent 7 figures plus $1, right? And that's what happens. I think too often that's what we do. We focus on the top line because nobody is taught to focus on the bottom line. And in a lot of cases, it's not easy to figure out the bottom line, right? You've got to do all this complicated accounting stuff, make sure all your systems are in place. Now, large companies, they've got people in place to do that. The small business owner, they're doing what they love. They don't even want to look at their spreadsheets. They don't even want, even if they have an accountant that sends them the reports, they don't open those reports up. They don't look at them. So that's the problem. As a business owner, they're just like, oh, I sold stuff. I'm happy.
We have some money coming in. That must be enough, right?
It must be. You cannot grow your way to profit.
What do you mean by that? You cannot grow your way to profit.
So if you're a company, right, let's say we're doing $500,000 in revenue and we're barely profitable today. Going from $500,000 to $2 million in revenue isn't changing the profit level.
Right.
You're like you said, right? In your example, well, we did a $2 million launch this year. We grew our company to $2 million, but we spent $2.1 million doing it. You can't grow your way to profit. You've got to have profit as the underlying core of your business to begin with. Otherwise, it's not just going to show up because you have more sales.
Yeah. So that sounds like a fascinating book to read, Profit First. And then how are you helping people apply those principles? What's the process for that?
So if you think about it, you could go to the gym today, right? You could work out once they're open.
Yeah, no, I can't.
and you could go on a diet and do that. It's pretty simple to implement diet and exercise, but nobody does it.
Right.
And even when they do it, they struggle and something doesn't work, and so they quit.
Right.
Right? What I essentially do is give them accountability. I walk side by side with you, and I help you do it. I help you implement the systems. And then when the financial reports come, I talk to your accountant and bookkeeper. I look at your financial reports, and then I call you up and go, hey, what was that $5,000 you spent last month? You're like, I didn't spend $5,000. I go, yeah, it's right here. It's right here in this report. What did you do?
Yeah.
And then it's also to say to them, hey, as you're making these decisions, let's start looking, what can we cut costs on, right? That's the biggest thing. Most business owners aren't focused on cutting costs in an appropriate way. So the classic example is, all right, we got to cut costs. Let's get rid of the coffee in the office. Are you nuts? That's a bad cost savings, right?
Yeah.
Pay more for coffee in the office, keep your employees happy. But maybe there's something else in your office that you're paying for software services that you stopped using 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Have you been looking to see if that happened? Most business owners can cut costs by 10% up front if they spend the time to go line by line and look at things. So what I do is I kind of go line by line and I help people look at the major expenses and how can we cut them and ask, do you really need to spend these dollars? Are they bringing value to the company?
Yeah.
So, and then are there areas where we can negotiate? So just the other day we were on a Zoom call and people were just talking, oh, Zoom's free. Oh, this plan's $15. This guy's going, I don't understand. I'm paying $50 a month. How are you guys all? And it's because he was on an old grandfathered plan, right? And he didn't realize that he could get a new plan. So that's happening all over the place in your business. And while $50 may not seem a lot, you do 50 times 10, and now it's $500 a month. And if you're a larger company, you do that times 100, you're at $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes. The other thing is, and you've talked about it, you keep adding employees.
Yeah, I've done that. And yeah.
So the question comes back. There are good employees and there are bad employees.
Right.
Right. Are the employees you have bringing value to their company, or are they creating fires that everybody else needs to put out? So that's one of the conversations we have. Like I help you go through, have these deeper conversations, deep dive into the numbers so that you make better decisions. And then the other thing is, I'm your bad guy. So you can always call people up and go, well, Rocky said we can't do that. And no one's allowed to argue with Rocky. So that's just life. You're not going to get a fight with him.
Yeah, that's funny.
And so it's a lot about that.
Yeah, from the employee standpoint, I think of, we had a big team at one point with our web agency, and there were people on our team that were awesome. They're incredible. And it was amazing the people who weren't, that, you like the person, or you're hoping that you can help them like get over whatever their issue is. And it costs you. There's not just the cost of that fallout, not just the payroll. I mean, I lost tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in employee costs that really weren't necessary. And I look at some of those people and it's just like, they're good people, but they're not good people for our team. And having that outside perspective of somebody else to say, you know what, you got 12 full-time people here. You probably can get by with 7. You're hiring more. And just because you have a lot of money coming in doesn't mean you need to have more people. And there are people that ended up poisoning the pool, if you will, by being there, who were not a good part of the team. And it actually then impacted all of us, and not in a good way.
And so I think with that, and I always struggle with, especially retailers. I'm like, why are you paying your people $12 an hour and you have bad people? Why don't you pay one of them 18 and get rid of one? Because that person will do twice as much and be happier. Yeah. And that person is now making a better wage. I mean, that's the Costco model. That's how Costco runs its employees. They pay them more, but they have less of them, because if you get good people who show up and do the work, you don't need as many of them. And so everyone is a little bit happier. But it's I think what happens to most business owners is they're caught in the weeds of their business. And so I help them get out of the weeds and take the big picture view. I create the space for the conversation to occur. You have the accountability now, and then I give you action steps so that you can start to go do things. Yeah. And it helps. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a lonely business. Yeah. And so having somebody on your team who's dedicated to your success is important.
And here we say all the time, isolation is the death march of entrepreneurship, but really isolation is the death march of any endeavor, whether it's entrepreneurial or not. A lot of businesses aren't struggling through the weeds of business. They're struggling through the deep forest of jungles that have overgrown in their business and are stuck there.
That's what I help. I create the space so that we can have those conversations and have better conversations. A lot of what I do is asking them bigger questions. Why?
You have one podcast out already. You have a second one on its way, maybe already here by the time this airs. So talk to us about those 2 shows.
So Richer Soul is essentially about how do you live that bigger life? The first part of it is, number one, what is your purpose? And I encourage people to figure out your purpose. And I like Michael Hyatt's book because it was easy. It's a systematic way to do it. It works. You just actually have to show up and do it. If there's other systems out there for you to figure out how to write your life plan, go do it. The second thing we talk about is mindsets. If you have the wrong mindsets, especially as an entrepreneur, it's a problem. Like I have rental business, right? So my mindset with my tenants is they're here to help me get wealthy. I'm going to treat them like gold because I want great tenants. There are some people who hate their tenants. I'm like, how can you hate your tenants? They're they have that struggle. So having the right mindsets, having an abundant mindset, having a growth mindset, changing your mindsets to be that. And then I think one of the biggest things entrepreneurs don't spend enough time on is their health, right? And if we lose our health, we're going to give away all our money to get it all back. So we really I'm 54. I'm in the best shape of my life, right? I deadlift 300 pounds, except now that the gym's closed, I probably can't lift a bar anymore. I'm more flexible. I'm in better health. I'm on intermittent fasting. I hardly eat. I stay away from sugars. I do the right things so that I'm in great health. Relationships. What are we doing to build relationships, right? That's why I show up at the networking thing where we get to meet. How do you improve your relationships, whether it's at work or at home, with your family, with your kids? Being intentional with those relationships and saying, what do I want my relationship to be? And how do I be a better person to other people? Time. So business is all about systems. So for me, it's doing a much better job of managing our time, because everything else is a replaceable resource with the exception of time, right? We only get so much to live in this life. It's up to you of how can you better utilize the time you have and use it appropriately. Spirituality, what is your connection to this universe? How are you giving back? How does it all kind of go together? And so you've got to figure that out for yourself and say, what does this really mean for me? And how does it all go together? And I think that's a major important part of it. So that's what we talk about. I'm not an expert in any of these areas, right? But what I am an expert at is looking at you and saying, you've got a problem in this area. Like you're out of harmony. You need to work on fixing that part. It's kind of like driving a Ferrari, right? Ferrari's a wonderful car. It's fast. It's great. If you have a flat tire, where's your Ferrari going?
It's going nowhere.
Going nowhere. Your health is bad, if you don't have time, if you got bad relationships, if you're not doing well spiritually, all of those things are going to prevent you from the ultimate life. And so this is about creating the ultimate life for you.
Super, super cool. We're going to take a break right here. When we come back, it's rapid fire questions. Hey there, friends, it's Mike, and over the last few weeks, I've been telling you about this really cool tool called Sendinblue that we've been using for our email newsletters. I want to give you a little bit of an update on our experience and some of the things that I've been super impressed about with their platform. If you build email newsletters at all, you know that one of the most difficult things to do is to build email templates that really reflect your brands. The tools are just clumsy and difficult and really hard to use. That's why I've been super impressed with my experience using Sendinblue. They have 3 tools that you can use to build out those email campaigns. They have a drag and drop builder, which is really easy to use. You just take the element you want. Maybe it's an image or some text, or you want some blocks for content. You just drag it over and then you design around it using their click and edit tools. Really easy to use. They also have a rich text editor. And for those techie people out there, you can get down and dirty into the code and really build out templates exactly how you want. Now, building email templates is critical to getting campaigns that work for your brand. So when I found that their tools were easy to use, I wanted to let you know. I hope you'll take some time and check them out. Best of all, for the first 100 Jumblethink listeners who sign up, they want to give your first month free on their premium plan. So head on over to sendinblue.com/jumblethink. That's sendinblue.com/jumblethink and use the code JUMBLETHINK to get your first month free. Now let's jump into rapid fire questions.
Le bras pour mettre l'aiguille sur le disque. Mettez le contact, reposez votre bras et attendez. Restez calme pendant un moment.
We are back, and before we dive into rapid fire questions with you, Rocky, I do, we circled this conversation a little bit earlier, but I kind of want to circle back to it, and that's the question of bookkeepers and accountants and EAs. A lot of businesses have bookkeepers. A lot of them have accountants, but a lot of them still struggle. So why is that?
So I think a big part of that is understanding their function.
Mm-hmm.
So for most business owners, the accountant's job is to file their taxes.
Mm.
It's not to make you more profitable, right? And when are they doing that? They're doing that in April, a year after you made money, right?
Yeah.
Your bookkeeper's job is to take the numbers and put them in the right places.
Okay.
And so that is what they do. So they're doing their job. But their job is not tasked with looking forward. Their job is not tasked to say to you, are you profitable? Right? They're reporters of information. They're not forecasters. They're not helping you see that bigger picture looking forward.
Yeah.
So I think all large companies have a CFO, right?
Yeah.
That guy's job is to look forward at cash flow. It's to look forward and say, hey, if we make this business decision, this is how much we actually expect to make in profit. I've actually filled out the spreadsheet, put the numbers in. This is how much money we're going to make by doing this. Most CFOs' jobs is also to say no.
Yeah.
Right? No, you can't spend that. No, you can't spend that. No, you can't. Oh, that's a home run. Spend that one.
Yeah.
So I think that's most small business owners cannot afford a CFO.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can have somebody on in their financial position, the problem is they can't afford to pay them enough to get quality people.
Yeah.
And so that's why I thought that my services were phenomenal, because I only work for you a couple hours a month.
Mm-hmm.
So you're only paying for a couple hours a month. You get this high level service, but just for a couple hours. And so you don't have to pay a fortune for it. And the returns for most business owners are 10x on the ability to do that.
Philosophy of moving from a reporter of data to a strategist for the future, I think, is so powerful.
It's very, very powerful. You've got to figure out where you're going and how you're going to get there and setting the right course.
Well, are you ready to dive into some rapid fire questions?
Sure. I don't know if I'll have rapid fire answers.
As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a pilot.
Okay.
The problem is I wore glasses and you can't be a pilot.
Oh.
They didn't have LASIK back then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
Take the first step.
Okay.
And just take a baby step. So I think an easy first step is go ask somebody who's done what you want to do and say, hey, tell me about your journey.
Yeah.
I'm starting this journey. What's my first step?
Yeah.
What should I do first? Because I think too often we do things in the wrong order. Classic example, like you'll see that with everyone. I'm starting a business. Great. What are you doing? Well, I've got my website up and I'm ordering business cards. Who cares? Nobody cares about your website and your business card. Go get a customer.
Yeah.
Go get somebody who's willing to give you cold, hard cash for what you want. They don't care if you have a website and a business card.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
So it comes back to what we've been talking about. My underlying thing in this whole thing is, why aren't we all millionaires? Why aren't we all financially strong? So if you think about it, we're in the middle of COVID. Can you imagine if America was financially strong, if people were financially strong, and we said, okay, COVID's here, and everyone said, you know what? We're going on a 3-month vacation because I got money.
Yeah.
Let's shut everything down. We're going to go hang out with our families. We're going to enjoy life. We're going to take walks in nature. We're going to regroup. And you know what? I've got so much money. I don't care about making the payments because I can.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy is my kids, right? It's did I raise my kids to be great adults, and have I helped to propel them? That's also part of the reason behind Richer Soul. It's to leave the legacy to my kids of here's how your dad thinks. Here's what he's learned. Here's how to get to success faster. Here's all the mistakes you can make, and you don't have to make them. Learn from somebody else. So that's a bigger part of what that is all about. So it's helping them and propelling them so that they don't have to wait so long to create success for themselves.
Where do you find inspiration?
I find inspiration from people that I follow that I think have great ideas. So a classic example of that is somebody like Seth Godin, who's putting out into the world a very different message of how we should live life.
Yeah.
Part of it comes from that. And then I do get inspiration from religious books and from, the core principles. And then probably actually my favorite book that I read every day it's called A Manual for Living. It's a Stoic book from Epictetus.
Oh.
And so it was written 2,000 years ago, but yet we as humans haven't changed in 2,000 years. Those principles, like I read the principles, I'm like, oh, okay, this is how I'm supposed to behave as a better human being.
Oh, that's funny.
And it's so small and so direct that it's just every day I read, 2 pages out of the book, and it's a teeny little book. I mean, this is really small.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It takes a minute or two, and that's like, okay, this is how I can improve today.
I think you've already answered this question, but I'll ask it anyway, just in case. What is one book you think every dreamer should read?
I might go back to Michael Hyatt's book because I think you have to have a plan for your dream.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a plan for yourself, like I think too often, so like as a kid, I wanted to be a pilot because I wanted to fly airplanes.
Yeah.
But if I had asked myself what kind of life I wanted, I would realize that being a pilot meant I would be gone from my kids half the time.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a good thing.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing is to figure yourself out.
Mm.
And then once you figure yourself out, you can say, do my dreams fall in alignment with the person I want to be and the life I want to live?
Yeah. So good. So good. For you, how do you define success?
I used to define it with money. Right? The American dream, right? It's the scorecard. I no longer go to that anymore. How do I define success? I think for me, success, and we talked about this concept before of ikigai, which is doing what I love, that the world needs, that I'm good at, and that you can get paid for. And the pay part is not so much necessary, but I think it means that people truly value what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it. It's not like you're doing something that people are like, oh, that's nice, but it brings more value to them. So when you can figure that out for yourself and you're excited to wake up in the morning and do what you love to do, that's success.
What is one trend you're currently excited about?
One trend, I think, digital learning.
Yeah.
Like the
so good.
ability to learn today is unbelievable because I grew up in a time where information was gold. Information is no longer gold. Anything I kind of want to find out. I mean, I can find out how the smartest people are investing their money. Mm-hmm. I can find out on YouTube how to fix my lawnmower, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is find outable. Yeah. And so I think it's an amazing trend. I think the concept of schooling is going to be drastically different in the future than it is today. Yeah. And I think you said it on my podcast is we need to learn how to learn. We need to stop telling people what to think and letting people learn how to think. And we need to go back to those principles. So good. What is one habit you find helpful in your life? Everything runs off my calendar. Like it's a joke in our house, right? If it's not on Dad's calendar, it doesn't exist. Yeah. So I tell my kids, like, if you've got events, and my calendar goes out for over a year. Mm-hmm. Like, if you've got events, put them on the calendar, and we're locked and loaded, and we'll definitely have them. But I also keep a lot of margin in my calendar. Yeah. So that there's plenty of space. I have an automated calendar, so if someone wants to book time, they can click on a link. but that link buffers both sides. It buffers the previous event, the past event. And so it gives me space. But if I can control my time, then everything else kind of flows. And I know to get things done because on my calendar, if I have to-dos, they're on my calendar. This is the big rock for today. Get this done today. And that's what I do.
What is one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
It's not about the idea. Like I think the reason I took so long to get back into entrepreneurship is I was looking for the one idea that I could do to get started a business. Like, what's my one business idea? I think if I had realized, go survey the world and see what problems they're experiencing that they want to fix and whether or not you can fix those for them. Yeah. And when you realize that, it gets things. I was just stuck for so long trying to figure out what's that one product, what's the one way I could do it.
Yep. And finally, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
It's building this business now.
Okay.
For me, this business is, I told you before I'm 54. This is not, I'm retiring at 65. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah. Pretty much as long as I'm able and I'm physically alert and mentally capable, I'm going to be doing this for the next 20, 30 years. This is what I'm going to do. And so I'm excited. I may pivot and make small changes in it, but somewhere in this space is helping people build financial wealth is my give back.
As we wrap up, we always like to leave our guests have a final thought. So what is your final thought for all of us listening today?
Take the first step. Just go do it. Failure is not the problem, right? Failure is just understanding something doesn't work. Yeah. Not trying is the big thing. You don't want to be at the end of your life with regrets. Yeah. So I'll leave you that. If you died today, would you have regrets? Ask yourself that question. And if you do, go fix your regrets.
Yeah. Love that. Rocky, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today. It's a bummer that we couldn't do this in person, but such is life right now. We'll have to do this again and do something real fun and live soon.
I'm looking forward to doing that. Hopefully we open up soon.
Yes. Once again, I want to thank Rocky for taking time out and being on the show with us today. You can find his links in the episode notes. We also want to thank our friends over at Sendinblue for sponsoring today's show. Best of all, they want to give you 1 month free of their premium plan. All you have to do is head on over to sendinblue.com/jumblethink and use that code jumblethink to get 1 month free. And finally, I want to thank you for tuning into today's show. It means the world to me that you would listen. Now, I know some of you are listening and you're saying, well, I'm not a business. And some of you are thinking, I do run a business. There are tons of lessons we can learn from Rocky. But I think one of the biggest things that we can learn about is that when we look at our finances, a lot of times we look with what we can do with what we have instead of actually coming up with a plan for the future. We're in a place of responding instead of really dreaming and then building the dream. That's my challenge to you today. Instead of looking at your finances in the rearview mirror, trying to catch up to all the responsibilities you have, look to the future and start planning wisely. And if you need some help, make sure you reach out for that help from Rocky. I know he can help you along that journey. Thanks again for tuning in. Now it's your turn to dream big. So get out there, dream big, and change the world around you.
Étirez-vous doucement, mais complètement. En avant, en arrière, sur les côtés. Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.